Before we start working on our first exercise in Docker, before we run our first container in Docker engine, let's look into the installation process of other distributions of Linux also. So let me click on CentOS. It by and large remains same. If you click on CentOS 7 or CentOS 8, whatever it may be, it remains same, but you have to install additional uh, utilities depends based on that particular distribution. So but if you see the CentOS, it's much easier than Ubuntu. It will have only two main commands for setting up the repository. Then after that, you can use one command to install. It's pretty quicker and faster. And GPG key prompts are also mentioned. And Debian for CentOS, it is we have used YUM package, yum package. For Debian, the package is apt-get again. Debian is apt-get. Fedora DNF. Fedora it's DNF, okay. And RHEL, Red Hat Enterprise Limited, it is YUM. Then SLES, for SLES slash, it is OpenSUSE, SUSE Linux repository. For that we used uh, sudo jper, okay. Jipper. This is what we are using. And for Ubuntu, anyway, we have used it, okay. So that's how other distributions install Docker. So let me get into the so this first activity is done, and Docker engine installation of Ubuntu. So now let us look into the second exercise, that is running or spinning our first container in Linux machine. For that, here we will take a simple example, that is hello world container. We will spin this. It will spin and post a print a message, and it will die. That's it. It will die. That's it. That's the work of this container. It just posts or prints the message, and it will automatically die. So that's how the container was made. So we are going to run a first container here. So let me get into Ubuntu and scroll down completely, down, and yeah. Yes, here you look here. So the Docker daemon, you have to make sure before we run our container, let us cross check clear, okay. Before we run our container, we should cross check whether our Docker service is up and running or not. So let me check that. System ctl status Docker. So but before that, we have some other activities to be done before we check the status. Let me directly say systemctl start Docker, and I'm starting the Docker service, and systemctl enable Docker. So what it's saying, when I say enable Docker, synchronizing state of docker.service with sysv service script with lib system md system sysp install. So executing, and the Docker, it's been enabled. So now let me check the status of the Docker service. Yes, it's up and running. You can see that active and fine, absolutely fine. It started 8 minutes ago. You can see that the triggered by docker.socket, and you can see that Dockered, we have discussed earlier. Dockered is our engine, that's our main engine, that is our server, this is what serves us. And CLI, the commands which we are going to give, is our client. Okay, so you have seen the Dockered. Now Dockered is running, our server is running. Now it's time to use API and client to do the activities. So let me click on Control C. So anyway, so our Docker is up and running. So now, before we run our first ever Docker container, let's look into some of the commands, some of the most important commands, and then we will run it. Because if you do not know what command is used for what, and how can I show that, how can I demonstrate the running of any container? So that's the reason Docker and help, long option. So scroll up and up and up and up and until it comes. Yeah, we have reached. Okay, so if you look here, so the Docker uses Docker command starts with Docker, and then here you can give any options, and after that you can give command, and here again arguments. That's the complete syntax of Docker commands. A self-sufficient runtime for containers. Now let's look into some of the widely used containers, widely used options. So C option, context string, we don't use much. Top level TLS. So V, we can use it widely. So V, option V. In spite of saying version, we can just give V and we'll get it. Okay, that's enough. Now let's get into the actual commands, the important commands that we can use. So the asterisks are basically deprecated. So container, context, these are the main commands that we generally we don't use this specifically. So let's come down more. Yeah, here we have the main commands. These are what we widely used. Let's begin with here. You see that commands. Attach, build is to build an image from a Docker file. So you have written a Docker file. What is Docker file? A Docker file consists of a set of instructions to do certain activity, to do certain task. So all those tasks, all those instructions will be put in Docker file. So then if you want to create a Docker image, you have to use a build. Then we have commit, and exec is very important command. Exec runs a command in a running container. When you use exec, it's execute, it runs a command in a running container. That means a running container itself is a miniature Linux OS. I have told you so many times by so far. So that's why we can run our commands in that container also. We can enter inside the container and we can see what is there inside the container. So then images, when you give Docker images, it lists images. When you say Docker inspect, it returns a low level information on Docker objects. And when you say kill, it will kill one or more running containers. And login, to log into a Docker registry, log out, to log out from a Docker registry. And more down, Docker pull an image repository or Docker image, to pull an image from a Docker Hub repository, to push your customized image to the Docker repository. We are going to do these things, don't worry. So and restart, restart one or more containers. This is to restart the container. Okay, rm, if you use just an rm, remove one or more containers. If you use rmi, to remove one or more images. And when you say run, this is very important. Run run a command in a new container. So run is going to spin a new container. So we are going to we are going to use this run command to stop to run or spin our first container, our first ever container in Docker. Then start one or more stopped containers, and stats display a live stream of containers, and stop one or more running containers, and tag. If you remember, in the desktop, in the Docker desktop, we have seen similar kind of activities. So here let me click on Postgres. By the time it will get fetched, and let me PostgreSQL, let it be running. So tag, if you give a tag command, it creates a tag, that target image that refers to the source image. Basically to tag a target, to tag an image, to tag a Docker image. And top is the one more thing. Top, the top command display the running processes of a container, and unpause update version shows the Docker version information, and wait block until one or more containers stop, then print their exit codes. So this is all about the containers, out of which the widely used commands are docker start to start the container, docker stop, docker rm, docker rmi, and docker top, docker build, docker run, docker exec, docker inspect. These are widely used. And docker restart also to restart, and docker pull and push are also very important. Pull to pull the image, and push the image, and docker ps to see the containers or list of containers, and docker images to see the list of images that we have. Okay, so now let's build our so now it's time to build our first ever container. Sorry, when we say build, it's for image, building an image. So for container, we have to say run or spin. So now let's spin or run our first ever container in Docker. So Docker run, you see, after the Docker I have used a run command. So run command, and I will mention the image name. So I want to spin a container from this image. Okay, I want to spin a container from this image. What is that image? Hello world. That's the image. In fact, I do not have any image in my local machine. Neither I have a Docker file. So let me check that. ls, see, I do not have any Docker file. And I'll give Docker images. I do not have any images. So from where it's gonna fetch? It's gonna fetch it from Docker hub. So how it can fetch? That's what is happened initially. It had it has established a secure connection using GPG key between Docker hub and then our Docker through API. So now whatever command that I give, it will fetch that. I'm going to show this architecture in another slide, but now you just understand when I say Docker run and hello world in my local machine, in my Ubuntu server, I do not have hello world image or neither Docker file. So it's gonna fetch from Docker hub registry, and then it's gonna pull from there, and then it will spin and container from this image. Okay, so let me execute it. So unable to find image, you can see that. So unable to find image. Okay, let me go up. Yeah, unable to find image hello world latest tag locally. So because there is no image in our local machine. So now after that, it has gone to the Docker Hub and it's pulling from that library hello world. And this is the image ID. Then it's been downloaded. So once it's been downloaded, it has run that image. So the image has been run or spun. So once it is spun, so now the container has come up and it has printed this hello from Docker. It has printed this message hello from Docker, and this message shows that your installation appears to be working correctly. Okay, so that means we have built our first ever container. We have run our first ever container and we have successfully run it, and the message has been printed. So now let me check Docker images. You should see an image. Here it is. Here it is. Hello world with latest tag image ID. That's okay. It was created 16 months ago. That's fine. And I will give Docker, sorry, Docker PS. There are no containers because the container which was running before was dead now. So I would give Docker PSA show all containers. You see that your hello world container is also there. And command is hello print this, and about a minute ago the container has been created and now the status is exited, so it's dead now. About a minute ago it's exited. Okay, so I hope now it's clear. So now we have done all these things using commands. Now let's get into the Docker desktop and compare the working. So Postgres is our image that was pulled with one command, and then it is in use. So 378.59 MB, it's too big. So then let me get into the containers. Now you see your container is running Postgres J2GK and latest tag. This is your container which is running presently. Now to stop the container, what command we have to use? Docker stop. Here simply you press this, that's it, it will be stopped. To delete the container, what command you have to use? Docker rm. Docker rm, and you have to give the container name, then it will be deleted. To start the container you have to say docker start, but here just press button and just press it and click it, that's it, all the things will be finished. So let me stop this one and I will delete this one. Yeah, I'll come there. I'll delete this one. Clear terminal. Let me go back to the container. So delete this container first. Yeah, go to the images. Now this is your image. So when you have an image, how do you run a container? Using commands. Using commands, what we did, docker run world. So you have used a docker run command to run a container, to spin a container. But here what you can do is to spin a container from this Postgres image, just click on a run. That's it. I'll click on a run and it will ask, do you want to attach any settings? Yes, of course. Host port, I would go with the 8080 and click run. Nothing much, nothing much. So you can see the logs. To see the logs, you have to give command. And database is uninitialized and super user password is not specified. Okay, when you're creating that, you have to create a super user password and it's exited. Okay, terminal. So to inspect the container, you have to use docker inspect. To enter into the terminal, you have to use docker exec. Here, okay, we will kill this container first. It's of no use. We have to give super user. Here we will find all our images and I will click on run, and here I will go and host port a container name post database and host port 8080 volumes I don't touch. Variables. Okay, whatever it may be. To enter into terminal, you just come and click here terminal, but there you have to give docker exec, and then stats you have to give docker stats. But here just a simple command, and just a simple click on a soft button that will lead. Okay, that's how the comparison between a docker desktop and a simple docker engine uh, makes a huge difference between. But whatever it may be, the docker engine, docker desktop is for learning purpose. I would urge you to use docker desktop so that you can, initially you will not have that fear, the commands and these kind of things, that fear won't be there. You just see, okay, you think it's pretty simple. Okay, then once you feel it's pretty simple, then you get into our docker desktop. You set up your docker, you set up your docker server, and you create your own docker image, and you run your own docker containers. So with this we are able to run our first ever docker container in docker engine in ubuntu machine, as well as docker desktop in windows machine. So let us mark this. So running or spinning our first container in linux machine is done. Hello world container, and we will, it will spin and print a message and it will die. So all are done. Let me mark it. Done.